Most coaches and business owners struggle with sales, not because they're bad at selling, but because they don't have a system. I used to feel the same way until I learned Alex Hormozi's C.L.O.S.E.R framework. And in this video, I'm gonna walk you through what his framework is, how I've adapted it for coaching sports online, and how you can use it yourself. So let's start by looking at what his framework is. His C.L.O.S.E.R framework is an acronym. So the C stands for clarify the problem. Another question that I like to ask here is, hey, how did you hear about me? How long you been watching me? And what made you book the call? Because at least for me and where I'm at in Catching Made Simple now, I've been doing business for about 2.5 years. And so a lot of these people have watched me for 2.5 years. Other people might have just found out about me last week. That's an important nuance to understand. The goal of this clarify section is to really understand the motivation and the context. And as we listen for that, we're gonna move on to the L, which is labeling them with the problem. The reason this is important is because if we fail to label them with a problem, there's no solution that we can give them. It's kind of like when I was growing up and in church, I heard my pastor say, if there's no sin, there's no need for a savior. There has to be a problem if we're going to sell something later on. Here's what this sounds like for me on the call. So it sounds like you're struggling with blocking and trying to make varsity. Is that right? Yeah. It is. We have to label them with the problem, and we need them to say that that's the problem and agree to it. When he trains his salespeople, you literally can't go past here unless you get them to agree that there's a specific problem that they're trying to solve. Once we've clarified why they're there and we've labeled them with the problem, we move into overviewing their past. I've heard him talk about how the transition into the overview can sound like, well, hey, I have to imagine that this isn't the first time that you've tried to solve this. What else have you tried? That's the first question, and it's called what else. Then you talk about, well, hey, what did you like about it? Whatever they liked about it, we're gonna use that in the sale later on. And then you ask, well, hey, what did you not like about it? And whatever they don't like, we're gonna use that in the sales conversation and talk about how we don't do that, as long as it's truthful, of course. And then you repeat this and repeat this and repeat this until you've exhausted their entire past. I've heard him talk about how this is called the pain cycle, where you're overviewing, hey, what else did you do? What did you like? What did you not like? Was there anything else? The reason this is important is because if they have a strong preference towards or against something and you don't figure that out, that can blow up the sale later on. So you're trying to uncover that early so that you can take that into account when you present your program. The next part of the sales process is called sell the vacation. I listened to a podcast that he talked about specifically on this, and he called this a 3-point pitch. This was a really, really interesting podcast, and he talks about the difference between done for you and done with you. Basically, the difference of a done for you is when you are doing it for the client. Now, if you're in a sports coaching business, this isn't going to apply because you can't catch the ball, you can't kick the ball, they have to do that. A done with you and a do it yourself are basically service models where you're doing it with them, or you just give the information like a course and they do it themselves. You sell those the same way. And what he said is on the done for you, you want to list out all the details. Well, first you have to do this, then you have to do this, then you have to do this, and if you get this wrong, then this doesn't work, and you have all these things, and I'm going to do all that for you. But on a done with you, you take all these things and you chunk it down into 1, 2, 3 easy, simple steps. He also likes to use analogies and metaphors in here, which would sound like, yeah, it's kind of like blank, 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 and then you have stories as well. I'll explain how I use this in my business in just a minute. The E is explain, truly explain away concerns. So this is where you're now handling obstacles and overcomes and objections. Technically, an obstacle would come here before we actually ask for the sale, but then an objection would come after the sale. It's easier to dismantle them earlier, which is why this overview section is really important. This explain away the concerns section, I'm not as good at talking about, but Hormozi has another hour-long video on YouTube that talks about exactly how he gets to this, how he handles objections. And basically the core of it is he talks about like an onion with 3 layers, and most people blame circumstances, then they blame others, and then they blame themselves. And your goal is to get to an empowered decision maker. And if you hear them talk about circumstances and others, they're not even in a place where they're ready to be able to make a decision yet. And so you need to get them to a spot where they actually have the ability to make a decision for themselves, because that's the whole goal of this process, is not necessarily to sell them into the thing, but it's to make a decision one way or the other, and hopefully it's the right fit, or it's not the right fit and they go do something else. So that's another way longer video. He talks about it. It's very good. You should go check it out. The last one is reinforce. The reinforce is reinforcing the buying decision, because there's a ton of research that shows that 24 to 48 hours after someone makes a buying decision is like the most important time for you as a business. It is your first impression, and you don't get to make a second first impression. If you do a bad job right here, renewal rates go down and refunds go up. If you do a good job right here, refunds go down and renewal rates go up. So if there's one spot to really focus on after the sale, nail that first 24 to 48 hours. Things that he's done is send a swag bag, personalized video from the founder, and a one-on-one onboarding call. Okay, so this is the overview of his framework. Now let me show you how I've adapted it for myself for an online sports coaching business. So within the way that I've adapted it, I start off with the very same thing. I clarify why they're there. What this normally sounds like for me is I'm like, hey, I'm super excited to connect with you guys. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you found out about me, how long you've been following me, and what made you actually want to reach out and book a call. That's typically the opening line that I will start with when I clarify. Right after that, I will go into label. So you see pretty much this very same at the beginning here. And again, the phrase that I'm going to use is, so it sounds like you're blank, or it sounds like you're trying to blank, or a mix of both. So it sounds like you're struggling with blank and you're trying to blank. Is that right? Next, we go into overview. Well, hey, tell me, what else have you tried? Did you like it? What did you not like about it? Awesome. Anything else? Have you worked with another coach before? Have you been practicing at home? Now, as I get into sell the vacation, I'm sorry, I feel like my handwriting is getting a little bit sloppier as we go. What Hormozi typically goes into here is the 3-point pitch. What I have started to do is add in a few additional steps right here. The first question that I ask here is, did you watch the video? You might be asking, well, what video are you talking about, Ange? Well, I have that in another video in the pre-call process. But basically what this video does is it answers all the questions about what the program is. Because I used to spend like 30 minutes explaining the program, and then they would ask me questions about it. And I was like, this is such a waste of time. I need to have them watch all this information before, so that then we can just talk about them and make the sale. Now I'm taking 15-minute sales calls and they're saying yes because they're so educated and bought into the whole entire thing, the program, me, everything. It's completely transformed my sales calls and my close rate. So that pre-call process is really, really important. Once I ask them if they watched the video, they say yes. Then I still explain the 3-pillar pitch or the 3-point pitch that Hormozi talks about before. And for me, here are the 3 pillars, and I would suggest that these might be your 3 pillars as well if you are an online sports coach. Number 1, the right plan. You could also substitute strategy or drills. Number 2 is the right feedback that's personalized to you based off your own video. And 3, the right practice. Now, this is really important. Then I say something like this. Well, hey, I know I can help you because I've literally helped hundreds of kids that look just like you. I know my plan works. It's helped so many others go from where you are to where you want to be. Even better, you can take that from whatever you labeled them with before. And I know I have the feedback because I give feedback every day to tons of players, and it works. But when it comes to the practice, use their name, I can't do that for you. Who actually has to do the practice? And they will say, I do. And I say, that's exactly right. So here's my promise to you. I'll give you the plan and I'll give you the feedback, but you have to do the practice. So here's what it looks like. Okay, and this is where I go into what I call a commitment conversation. I have a whole nother video on how to have a commitment conversation. I'll link that right after this. But this is really, really key because when it comes to an online sports coaching program, one of the biggest problems is it's online. So you're not physically there. So it's on them to actually do the work. And so a lot of coaches at the beginning, and I encountered this a little bit, but a lot of the other people that I've been working with, they're like, hey, I have these people, they said that they're gonna do it, but they're not doing it. And I always ask them, did you have a commitment conversation? And they said, what's that? And I said, okay, you didn't. I need to talk about this more. So a commitment conversation is basically, well, hey, here's what it looks like. Would you wanna do that? Yes, I would. Okay, now would you commit to it? Yes, you would. Okay, now what would get in the way if you had to guess? So you're locked in, you're committed to actually doing the work. After this commitment conversation, we go to implementation. And implementation sounds like this. Well, hey, all right, if you're in, here's what will happen next. We'll schedule an onboarding session that will be 30 minutes specific to you, and we're gonna solve your biggest movement problem right away. And then we'll start working through the program. You'll send me 3 videos a week, and then you'll join the group calls if you can make them. They're at this time. Does that work for you? Okay, awesome. Okay, so now let's talk about the investment. This is where you actually say what it's gonna cost. How I like to say it is, hey, it's gonna be X amount per week, or if you prepay, you get X amount of weeks free. Do you think that'll work? Then if they say yes, you say great, and then you reinforce the decision. If no, then that's when you would go into the E, which is explaining away the concerns. When it comes to this section on explaining away the concerns, I probably have a lot of room to grow here. If you get nervous here when you're trying to explain away concerns, one of the best things that I learned how to do is to isolate it. Well, hey, aside from the price, is there anything else that's holding you back? No. Okay, well, let's talk about price. This is where you can introduce payment plans. And another thing that I've done that has really helped is I'll just invite them to the first group call if they're still on the fence and you know that you can help them. I think that oftentimes they're just unsure of whether they're gonna get the value or not. And so this is also where you have a 100% money back guarantee as well. You're gonna get way more people to actually convert through having a really strong guarantee. And if you do a good job and you're selling the right people, it just works. Then that leads us to our last one, which is reinforce. When you reinforce, probably the number one most important thing that I'm learning is it's an onboarding call. You schedule the onboarding call right from the sales call, ideally within the next few days. And on that onboarding call, I try to get a nickname if they have it. I try to really solve one big problem for them. I teach them how to journal. I make sure that all their tech is set up. And ultimately, I get takeaways from both them and the parent at the end, just to make sure that they are both articulating the value that they got on the call. And again, just trying to reinforce, yeah, this is a good idea. You keep consistent at this, you're gonna make tremendous growth and get to exactly where you wanna go, which is what they told us right up here. Another thing that you can do, I did this a lot at the beginning, I haven't done this as much lately, but you can send a tripod and a journal. This is like 30 bucks all together on Amazon, and it's just a cool touch that allows you to send them something as soon as they join the program. I've stopped doing this as of late, but you could also send like a hat or something like that. Like that could also be cool. So the big key difference is the commitment conversation, the implementation, and the investment. And if you want to watch this video on how to have a commitment conversation, then watch this video right over here.